Hey everybody, this is Chuck. I'm really excited to get these episodes up on the Funbearable feed. This is a mini series that I did a while back. Actually, I think it was during COVID we did these. It was a mini series that I wanted to do a while back on my last podcast with Brad, the Chuck and Brad podcast. And this mini series was called TESD Town History, or TESD Town History, whatever you think, where I think in the middle of COVID or in the summer, I'm not sure when it was. I believe it was in August. I came up to New Jersey. I was still commuting from Rhode Island to New Jersey to film with Tell 'em Steve Dave at the time, and I think that Walt, the head of the TESD projects, he wanted to film a few things because he didn't know how long COVID would go for or how easy it would be to film. This is what I remember happening. And at the same time, I was doing the Chuck and Brad podcast with Brad. We had done a few on Zoom, but they were all pretty similar because we couldn't do anything. All we could do is watch movies and talk about movies and TV shows, whatever. So I kind of pitched this idea to the Tell 'em Steve Dave guys that I'd love to do one-on-one episodes with them about their entire history, because Tell 'em Steve Dave is this long-running storied podcast that a lot of people love, and there's a lot of things that kind of have popped up over the years that they never explained, or there's holes in the information of why certain things happened over the years with them and Kevin Smith and Comic Book Men and Jan Silent Bob Secret Stash, all that stuff. So I did one-on-ones with Walt Gedham, Brian Johnson, Ming Chen, Mike Zapsik. I believe that those were everybody. I would love to get Quinn, my buddy, but he has a tough schedule. So these originally, when they came out, they got a huge response, which was really, really cool. People really, really liked them. It was really positive. And so that turned into me hosting a show on the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon called the TESD Tapes, which is really just a continuation of the TESD Town History episodes here. And for TESD Tapes, the first one we did on the Patreon was me with a one-on-one with Sunday Jeff. And I kind of realized, I'm like, oh, you know what? On the Chuck and Brad podcast, I feel like we can just kind of sit and have a conversation and get to some deeper stuff and interesting stuff. But on the Patreon, I feel like there's a little bit more responsibility to be fun and funny and kind of lively. So after that initial Sunday Jeff one that we did on the Patreon, we did a history of Baron von Flanagan, and we did a history of the Halloween episodes from Tell 'em Steve Dave, as well as a part one of the history of the Tell 'em Steve Dave Christmas episodes. So all of those, all the TESD Tapes episodes are on patreon.com/TESD. The first four, the four are there. We're going to do a part two to the Christmas ones, but apparently we're not doing that this year. Maybe we'll do it in December of 2025. But the TESD Town History episodes, I've wanted to repost them on Funbearable for a long time. And now that we're doing the TESD Town Takeover on Funbearable this November, I thought that this would be an appropriate time to drop some of them. So we're going to drop them. And this first one is a sit-down I did with Walt Flanagan. Like I said, I believe this was August 2020. It's got to be, I think. And it was really great. I was really, really happy with this episode. Like I said, people really enjoyed it, and I appreciated that a lot. And, I want to give a special thanks to Walt for being pretty open for this thing. And looking back, it's a really strange time in the Tell 'em Steve Dave lore and the history of Jan Silent Bob's Secret Stash and the stuff with Comic Book Men and that whole thing. If you're a fan of Tell 'em Steve Dave, you know that, right after this or pretty soon after this, they moved stores. And right after that, Walt stepped down as manager, or right around that time. And then eventually Tell 'em Steve Dave moved out of the stash. So this is a really interesting interview looking back as being right before all that stuff happened. So if you've listened to this before, maybe listen to it again with fresh ears, knowing all the stuff that happened afterwards. Or if you have never listened to this, I hope you enjoy it. And if you're getting just pulled into Funbearable for the first time from this TESD Town Takeover, welcome. I really hope you enjoy what you find here. Go check out our 2 episodes with Walt and Get 'em that we shot in the Tell 'em Steve Dave General Store. One of them is called Psychic Trivia. The other one's called Game On. Those are in the Funbearable feed. And there's just a lot of fun stuff. We have one-on-ones with, I shouldn't say one-on-ones. It's Mark Norman coming on the podcast with me, Ray and Brad, Joe List, Mike Cannon, a lot of comedians, Kevin Ryan from Are You Garbage. Those are all in the feed. Check them out. And stay tuned for the rest of the TESD Town Takeover. We still have a ton of episodes coming up. We have a really amazing set of episodes coming this week with Brian Rupert, one of my best buds, and one other person that has also has hosted shows on the Patreon and does a lot of video work with me, along with for Tell 'em Steve Dave. And then of course we are going to have episodes with Brian Johnson and Jimmy the Hair Guy, and those are all coming up very soon, along with a few more reposts of the TESD Town History episodes. So stick around. Check out the rest of Funbearable. Please subscribe and rate it and review on iTunes if you like it. I hope everybody has a good time with this thing. And it was really fun to be let in like this by the Tell 'em Steve Dave guys. And I always appreciate it when they're welcoming and inclusive and warm like that. It's a real important thing to me. So please enjoy my sit down with someone who I kind of consider like my creative dad, Walt Flanagan. All right, I'm here in Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in Red Bank, New Jersey, with Walt Flanagan. How you doing, Walt?
Hey, what's up, Chuck?
Not too much. I've been wanting to do this interview for a long time. I think the first time that we really filmed together was for Scream Baron Scream, which was it for the Gramercy Blu-ray?
It was for the Elephants in the Room.
Elephants in the Room. It was one of the trailers for Elephants in the Room. That's right. Yeah, we started, that's right. Elephants in the Room. Because we filmed Gramercy, and I really didn't know you guys at all.
I didn't even know that anybody filmed it, to be honest with you. The Gramercy was what year?
2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Q's manager, whose name escapes me right now.
It's Dexter.
Dexter, yes.
Yeah.
I guess he hired some people to film, which would be you.
Yeah.
And after that night, I don't think I've ever spoken to Dexter since that night. Since that, I had no contact with him. I had no knowledge of anybody filming it, or if there was somebody filming it. I mean,
right.
It was done in an era where filming and video taping Tell 'em Steve Dave was not a thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole reason I wanted to film it. It was actually the second live show you guys did that summer. I don't know if you remember. You did a show at the Bell House.
Yes.
With Get 'em. Mm-hmm. I was at that show.
Were you?
And I mean, we'll get to this point in time, but I reached out to you to see if I could film that show. And you were like, you wrote me back.
Did I write you back?
Yep. You wrote something like, "Oh, that's very kind of you," and that's it. And I was like, I was telling Gina this at the time because we both went. I was like, these guys do this podcast. They probably have people talking to them all the time that say, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to do this for you guys." And probably 90% of them don't come through. They probably don't. They don't know. You don't to trust me that I'm going to do something good. You don't know what I'm going to do. You have no idea who I am. So I was like, I knew that. And I reached out to you for the Gramercy one too, and you basically said the same thing. It was just fine. And I found Brian's email address. I wrote him. No one got back to me, and I was like, I'll write to Dexter just in case. And
how did you get his email?
So it's funny because from being in the band and doing journalism stuff that I've done, I just have to be able to be good at hunting down people's information, Googling stuff. But honestly, I think I was looking for stuff about Tell 'em Steve Dave, followed the Quinn links, whatever he had up, went to the Impractical Jokers website, and I think at the time they had some contact information, and one of them was maybe it was booking or something, and it was Dexter's email.
That's so weird.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and it's so weird. And I remember how I found out. Like it was like, oh, how long ago? How many years later was it that like the footage resurfaced? Though
it's crazy. It's funny because I want this to be about you, but I'll tell you this. It's crazy. Here's what happened. So I guess we'll open with this story. That makes sense. All right. So I reached out to Dexter, and during this time, I was out of my house from the house fire. So I'd lost a bunch of my equipment in the house fire. So he was like, he wrote back, he said something like, what kind of equipment do you have? And how much would you need? And all this stuff. And we didn't get the guarantee, like, okay, we want to hire you guys, come out, until about 48 hours before we left. But I didn't have enough equipment. So the day before we came to film Gramercy, I had to go to Best Buy and I had to buy like $2,000 worth of equipment with the plan of just returning it as soon as I finished the shoot. So Gina was my camera B person, and my buddy Brad, who I do this podcast with, my camera C person. And at the time, neither of them had any experience filming. So I had to have like a crash course the night before of what to do and like how to frame things. And I contacted them through like Facebook Messenger the whole time, and they were showing me their angles, and we were adjusting according to each other. But so we only had like 48 hours to go down. And yeah, that's how our relationship started, was me reaching out and talking to Dexter. And so I came to the show. I didn't meet you or Brian or Quinn at all, ever in my life before that.
Did we meet that night?
And so basically you guys did the first show, and Sal was the opener. I filmed Sal too. Dexter asked me to film Sal too. Then in between shows, you were downstairs and I was downstairs too, because that's what they told me to go with my equipment. And I went up to you. And this wasn't the first time we talked. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the first time we really talked about work together at any capacity. And I said like, "Hey, what are we filming this for?" Like, I'm part of the film crew, whatever. And you were like, "I don't know. This is Q's deal." That's what you said. So I was like, "Okay," which makes sense, right?
Right. Yeah, I had no knowledge that there was even a film crew.
Right. So I was like, "Okay." So I filmed the second show. I filmed Sal's second set. And we went home the next day, and I started like fixing the footage, like color correction and syncing. And Dexter had said like, "Oh, Declan is going to mix the audio." I'm like, okay, I knew Declan from the show. It made sense. And like 9 months went by. It was literally like 9 months. And I was like, I wonder what they want to do with this. And so
did you send the audio to Declan?
Whoever, I don't know who recorded the audio. I think Dexter did it, but he must have sent it to him.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, I didn't really, I didn't really have any specific point of contact besides Dexter. So what happened was, you might remember this, maybe you won't.
Oh, I remember it.
So basically we did, on my podcast, we had my old friend Eric Maxud, and we had this hypothetical joke we always made with him when he was on the show about how he had this older, like racist, like, slutty grandmother named Noni Maxud. And we were doing a live show, and I was doing a prank on him where I made funeral invitations for his grandmother, this fake grandmother we made up. And I was sending them across the country to people with these funny messages on them and getting people's responses and stuff like that. And so I sent one to the stash, and I was like, "Hey, Walt, this is Chuck. I filmed the Gramercy thing. This is a prank on my friend. I explained it." I go, "I still have that footage. Whenever you want to, want me to do something with it, I'm here. I'm ready to go." And that's what prompted you to contact me for the first time.
Yeah.
I put my email address on there.
Yeah, I remember looking at, I thought it was a real...
It was a real
invitation.
A real funeral invitation.
And it's crazy how close I came to just throwing it away immediately. Yeah. Because I was like, what is this bullshit? Yeah. And I was going to throw it away. I don't even know what prompted me to read even further than the first thing. Because I'm like, why would someone send this here?
Yeah.
Like probably I was annoyed at something, and I didn't even give it a more than a glance.
Yeah.
But something made me read further, and then it said that, you had filmed the Gramercy show.
Yeah.
And I was like, and how many, that was like almost a year later, right?
Yeah. So we filmed the Gramercy show in July, and then I think I sent this to you in like May of the following year, 2017 in May. I think you wrote me and you said like, I thought this was like an Impractical Jokers fan sending it to Quinn, trying to get Quinn to actually come to his grandmother's funeral. So that's when we started talking. And then, I think you were like, "Let me talk to Declan," and Declan's like, "Oh yeah, I'll get on that audio." And then it kind of just set the ball in motion, and we did the first Blu-ray, which is live at the Gramercy. But it was like 9 months because there was really no plan. And it was just, it was almost like, I mean, even the way I pitched it to Dexter, I was like, there's so few Tell 'em Steve Dave live shows. It doesn't make sense not to film it is kind of more than what I thought. Like you should just have it for even if you don't release it for a couple of years, who cares? You know what I mean?
That one was easily our most visually.
Yeah. The blood.
We had the spit in the blood in the beginning. Yeah. There was the Domino's costume that Bri wore.
Yeah. So, and then there was eventually like 8 people on stage.
Yeah. So when I realized that someone had that footage, I was like, we could do something with that.
Yeah.
Because it's so rare for anybody to see any of this stuff unless you were there in person.
Yeah.
So that's really what prompted me to reach out to you and see if we can get the ball rolling on getting that footage up to snuff to be released in some capacity. I didn't know how. I mean, we didn't have I don't even know if we had a website at that point.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't even remember, but I remember that it was like, what are we going to do with this? And we talked about a Blu-ray and then it was like, let's just put the whole entirety of both shows. And it was funny because see, this is, so maybe we'll go back and we'll get to this point because I kind of want to talk about you and your journey from being, from just kind of growing up and having, whatever aspirations you had then, and now becoming part of this very specific like world of entertainment through Tell 'em Steve Dave that has become so expansive.
It has expanded
like crazy in the past 9 years. And it's funny because I was even, we've been filming stuff and I was even thinking about it. I'm like, man, if Comic Book Men filmed in late 2011, Tell 'em Steve Dave didn't start till early 2011. That's crazy.
I thought, well, no, I thought we started in 2010, I thought. Or unless that's the error.
2000. Oh, yeah. Maybe it is February 2010. Maybe that's what it is. So there's like a year. Yeah. Maybe that's right. But I wanted to talk to you about it because I think it's a real, a really interesting thing that has changed. And one thing that I noticed about you guys over the years is that you don't ever really like look back or talk about how something came to be, or talk about the evolution of something. And I know you personally because we've talked there's a million texts and emails between me and you. And whenever I get like a little sentimental and I'm like, you're like, anyway, the next video, you jump on it immediately.
Yeah, I'm not one to like wax poetic about, because, especially lately, because it's like, it's on to the next thing.
Yeah.
We're putting, I know it's crazy that people are like, well, you're putting out one thing a week. Well, like that's what a harsh schedule that is, one thing a week. But like those one thing a weeks are hard to get out than people would think. It's like there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of time and thought.
Oh, hell yeah.
And something comes out that's really, really good. Mm-hmm. And but all people remember is like, well, what's up next? What comes out next week?
Not only that, it's like, since we're filming all the time, it's not even really just one thing per week, because you guys are doing the Patreon merch stuff.
Yeah.
You guys are, having like, you have social media, obviously, that's pushing this stuff. You have someone who's running the Patreon. You have Declan having to mix all the audio. You have multiple video people. You have all these different people that are kind of doing different parts. I mean, even just the preparation of filming that one thing per week is a lot of work. Yeah, it's crazy. And that's on top of the normal Tell 'em Steve Dave stuff. And on top of running the store.
Yeah, but that has become the easiest of the, because we just sit down with no cameras, no nothing. It's just just like it was in the beginning, just 3 mics.
Yeah.
And just no real plan, just roll with it.
Yeah, right.
And
so it's the least amount of thought beforehand.
Yeah. Right. It actually has become the least amount of homework.
Right.
To do a regular Tell 'em Steve Dave than it is to do the other stuff. I'm not complaining about it, because I enjoy it and it's fun as hell to do all that other stuff. But
yeah, the workload.
There's a certain amount of homework that has to go into it, and prep and gathering the things you'll need, costumes, all the other nonsense. But
Frank 5 driving down.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts on it to do. Just put out one thing a week. And I mean, initially when we started the Patreon, it was just all audio, and it's just evolved into something that's a bit more visual now than it has ever been. Yeah. But when you do visual, though, to do it right and to do it with in a way that
is interesting all the time, new and different.
And something that you could look back on and be like, oh, I'm proud of that release.
Right. I know.
I do have a certain amount of pride in the some of the things that we've released. Not everything. Some things just don't work out, you know, but for the most part, though, 99% of the Patreon stuff, when I look back at it and look at it, I'm like, damn, I'm really impressed with how well some of the things came out. And that is definitely your involvement, Victor's involvement, but like something like the Making Hay documentaries.
Yeah.
You turned that footage that Q found on his camcorder into something that I just adore. I adore it. I think it's awesome. I'm surprised it didn't get as much feedback on it because I thought it was fucking awesome.
I appreciate that.
I thought it was like one of the best things we've ever released. And because it's almost like archival fucking footage.
Exactly. That's how when we were like, because I remember, you know, the Patreon schedule has been like, kind of like, oh, we'll do a couple of these things. And now it's a little bit more structured where it's like, let's do a couple Frank Fives and we'll do a Sunday Jeff show. We'll do this. But back then it was a little bit more like, what should we do next? What are we going to do next? And when you were like, oh, we have the footage from Making Hay 1 and 2, let's just make documentaries about them. It was a really tall order because no footage existed really that was actually of you guys podcasting, which is the majority of it. But I was like, I knew as soon as I listened to the footage and like I watched the footage and listened to the show, I was like, I got to make this my goal. I told Gina, I was like, I got to make this feel like an HBO documentary. That's what I want this to feel like. And I'm lucky that people filmed these random episodes in the store on YouTube and put those clips up. And then we used a bunch of pictures we had. And yeah, I appreciate it.
I can't say enough about that one. That one just made me smile from ear to ear because it's like, that's the equivalent. That footage is the equivalent of like finding like a fucking caveman in a glacier.
I feel. Yes.
Because that stuff, like, no one even knew it existed.
Yeah,
no one knew it existed, and Q just had it, and he had it for a while. Yeah, and he gave it to me, and I was like, "What are we going to do with it? Well, let's do something spectacular with it." Well, like we had all these crazy plans that we were going to do with it that I don't even think I ever spoke to you about. Like we were going to do Making Hay 3. Mm-hmm. And film it all, and then put this on at the end of it as like over a montage of like music and everything, But it didn't look like Making Hay 3 would ever happen, though.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't look like we had talked about Making Hay 3 for so long, and with Q's schedule, it just, to me, it felt like it ain't happening.
Yeah.
Why? And we have this Patreon now. We need content. Mm-hmm. Let's utilize this Making Hay footage, and especially since we did Making Hay 3.
Yeah. And we're able to do it with that.
Able to do it with that. It was, it's one of the projects that I'm extremely, extremely proud of. I love it. I love it, and amongst a lot of the other stuff that you worked on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Everyone's, we're all. I think I wrote to you like a little bit after the Patreon started. And I'm like, we're all a team in this. I feel like we're basically making our own like Saturday Night Live, where it's like every week we got to do a new thing.
Well, yeah, to me, it's more. It's not like I would never ever compare it to Saturday Night Live. I think that's ridiculous. I compare it to a cable access channel.
Yes, yeah,
from
totally,
the 80s.
Totally.
I remember having access to a cable access channel when I was growing up.
Yeah, and
the amateurish shit that would come on there, but it was fun to watch though. It felt like it was like like I shouldn't be watching like pirate TV or something. Like no rules. They're just doing whatever they want. Like the Uncle Floyd show was something that it was on here. There was a comic book review show that I would watch on cable access. No budgets, nothing that anybody would ever remember fondly. But that vibe though was how I wanted the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon to feel like that kind of like
variety,
like the TSD TV.
Yeah, exactly. Like that.
That project that we did, that would come to life with the advent of us doing this.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree 100%. But it is everybody working together because there's so many different parts to this and personalities and people behind the scenes that are, I see. there's this power rankings. It's like just for fun that people release on the Reddit. And I'm like, man, Declan should be on this every month. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah. So what I wanted to talk to you about was kind of, your journey, because you're kind of an unassuming guy, and it's interesting to see where you are now that you're in charge of so many creative projects where you just got to come up with stuff. I was thinking about this. I was like, you must be reviewing stuff or working on stuff like every day, right?
Almost every day.
It has to be.
Almost every day there's something to look at a cut.
Yeah.
Look at a rough cut and see if there's anything I want to change or add or any ideas that I can like bounce off you or Victor and be like, you know what, don't you think it'd be fun here?
Yeah.
Throw this in. For the most part though, lately though, I haven't had to do that with any of your stuff. Your stuff's like really been on fucking on point. There's been nothing to add to it. It's been so fucking top notch. But
like even bouncing off ideas, I'm sure with Get 'em during the day to say like, what should we do next?
Yeah. We did something recently. Like we did a take on Press Your Luck game show.
Yeah.
And it originally was going to be something totally different and just but bullshitting would get them.
Yeah.
And it morphed into something else, and Victor had that one. He did an awesome job on that. It was too. Everybody's come to like, I can't say enough about the people who are involved with it, from people that are filming it and cutting it to the people who are on the actual podcast. It's been fun, but it's also been a lot of work too.
It's a crazy amount of work, and this is it's crazy.
You see and then that's just the fucking content.
Yeah.
You should see my fucking garage. You should see my garage. It's just full of fucking merchandise for the tiers that get gifts.
I know.
It is absolutely fucking taken over my life, and my wife's like, and she's just like, we have to get a storage unit. There are windbreakers. There are baseball caps. There are koozies everywhere. There is no room. We can barely fit the car in now. There's just enough room to fit the car in. It's like the Goldbergs. I don't know if you saw that episode where they just carved out all the boxes of shit that they had where they could fit the car in and nothing else.
Yeah.
That has come to fruition at my house.
See, this is what's so crazy. So I want to go back a little bit, and it's funny because everybody knows that you're an artist, and that was your initial like interest in, entertaining people and bringing kind of your creativity to the table, right? That's where it started. Is that where it started? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it is so strange and foreign. I know people will say this like, oh, I am definitely not trying to be modest or anything, but I've never, ever considered myself an entertainer, ever. And I will go to my grave trying to keep that mindset, because I am not an entertainer. I am not. I don't understand how that happened. If that happened, or their perception is of that from other people. I don't know when that happened, though, because basically
that's what's a conundrum to me, because it certainly has happened. You have one of the most popular podcasts on Patreon. You have tons of people. Like we're sitting in front of a glass case of people who made pictures and paintings and statues of stuff that you came up with quotes that you said on it, and that's what's so crazy to me is that starts by accident. That's the weirdest thing. Is telling Steve Dave is kind of an accident. Yeah,
it definitely started. Well, I mean, if you like, as you said, go like comic books, even like that. Like I hate to have anybody say, "Oh, you're an artist" or whatever. Like I do art, I draw, but like the guys who I call artists, I am not. It's just that weird thing. I guess it's just that.
I think a lot of people have that. I think it's just a normal thing, even for people who are like on SNL now. They're just like, oh, they have that kind of imposter syndrome, and I think it's in a lot of people.
I think that's. I've never heard that before, imposter syndrome. Yeah. But like I do have that feeling of like, especially when it comes to art, because I know how far I would like to get to a point like, where I'm happy with what I draw or what I put out there. I have fun doing it, but I would never, and people like will email me and be like, well, like I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. What pointers can you give me? I'm like, I am not the person that you should be asking pointers for on art. I go, I am just like, if I do anything that I'm even halfway happy with, I consider that a success. But for the most part, though, like,
Man,
it's very tough for me to consider myself an artist.
I've always loved all your stuff. I had a ton of stuff before the fire, and I still have all the cacophonies, but I don't have some of the other stuff I used to have. But man, I've always loved your stuff, and I've loved even sometimes people will put up the custom stuff that you've done in Tides of Pages. I love that stuff. That's like my favorite stuff.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's just so interesting because you were going down that path, and obviously, Kevin starts making movies, and you're part of Clerks in all these different ways, and Mallrats continues. I mean, I'm skipping over stuff because everyone knows the stories,
right?
And you're part of all these different things. And so let's go back to Clerks. I mean, you're in Clerks. Were you doing anything? So were you must have been drawing at that time, right?
Poorly, very poorly, very amateurishly. Certainly not anywhere near the level to be published. It was just bad.
Yeah.
I have some of the drawings I have from that era, and they're an abomination. They're an embarrassment. But I like. But the thing, everybody knows the story. I'm not an actor. He just was he was filming that stuff. And
so you weren't interested really in being like, I want to be part of a creative project at all.
No, I would just go to watch. I would go to watch and check it out because nobody I had known had ever attempted to make a movie.
Yeah.
And, he's doing this, and he's got a crew, he's got equipment. And I would go down there, I wouldn't even go down there when they first started filming. Like, they would start at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And I would wait till like almost 11 or 12 because I would be out with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who was, who is now my wife. But like, I would just wait till I was done with whatever we were doing, and then I would just show up at like 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, because I knew they were going to be there all night. Yeah. And I would just see how things were going. Yeah. And sometimes people would just not show up. And they'd be like, I don't think this person's showing. You want to jump in there and do this? Right. And the feeling being like, well, I just was in something a couple nights ago. Yeah. And, it's going to look ridiculous if I'm in every episode and every scene. Yeah. And he was like, you put a hat on, people won't even realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you didn't really have any interest in pursuing something creative.
No. And if you look, like, I'm involved, my involvement in everything starts to wane in his movies as the movies go on because, I'm in Mallrats real quick. Yeah. I'm in Chasing Amy in a cut scene. In a cut scene in the comic book store. Yeah. I'm in Dogma in a second because at the abortion clinic. Yeah. Because as Kevin's climbing the ladder, he's getting real deal actors. He doesn't need to put this fucking amateur in there, his friend. Yeah. And he buys the store. Yeah. And then that's my gig. Yeah. It's not like I'm not on set anymore. I'm not around. He's out in California making movies.
This is your responsibility.
Here. Yeah. And I'm not involved in any aspect any longer. Right. In films or cameos. And, real quick one maybe in Clerks 2. Yeah. Real quick. But, and then Strike Back at the very end, we walk out. Certainly not like roles. They're not roles. They're just like little quick Easter eggs for people who are paying attention. Yeah. And that's the way I wanted it because I was like, I don't want to do all that stuff. I don't want to be on, especially when you're making it in front of such a large amount of people. Right. Clerks is made in front of 3 people. Yeah.
The set of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is a different world.
Yeah, there's 1,000 people on set, and I have to act like I have to do something that I feel self-conscious doing. Not that, but anything that I would feel self-conscious doing.
Right, performing in general. Yeah. So it's so you have no interest in that. So it's funny because let's just say that takes us up to around the early 2000s. And you do Carney.
Oh, that 2006, 2007 is Carney. Yeah, that was something that I finally just made the decision I would finish something. Yeah. I would be like, I had drawn so many things, and I remember my wife saying, you start all these comics you're going to do, and you never finish them. Yeah. And she was right. She's like, you never finish them. And I was like, I'm going to finish this one. I'm going to do this book about this freak show that Brian wrote a movie script for. Yeah. And I'm going to finish it, and I'm going to see it to the end. Yeah. And I did. I actually did, and that was almost enough for me. And then we submitted it to IDW, Chris Rael, a guy that that Brian kind of knew. I really didn't know him. So we kind of had it in, and he accepted it, and he published it.
Yeah.
And then we did a follow-up called War of the Undead with Rael and IDW, and that was super fun.
Yeah.
And then that got me the, I don't want to say cred. It's certainly not cred, but I guess it got Kevin, it put a bug in Kev's ear that like, well, he finished these 2 books.
Yeah.
I want to do a Batman book with, and I'm going to see if DC will let me draw it.
And the first 2 are like super fun.
Yeah, Cacophony and...
No, I mean like Carney and War of the Undead.
Oh, okay,
they're just like, they're so fun.
They're out there,
Yeah, they're exactly. They're awesome. Yeah.
They were very, very fun to do.
Yeah.
And as the Batman projects were fun to do too, but way more intimidating because I had editors approving everything that I did.
Yeah.
So there was so much like stress and like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. They're gonna fire me. I'm not fast enough. That's an also thing. I'm not fast enough to do it as well. But the books came out. They were lifelong dreams to be able to draw some of the characters I got to draw.
Yeah.
And around that time after finishing Gyre is when Tell 'em Steve Dave started up.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting. So my perception, because I'm kind of like, before I get involved with Gramercy, I'm like the average person who's on the outside of this world seeing it happen. Because I was born in '84, so Clerks came out when I was 10, so I was a little bit young for Clerks. But like by the time the Chasing Amy was on like VHS, I started consuming like View Askew stuff. And you hear things in the movies like, LaFour's in Mallrats, he's faster than Walt Flanagan's dog. And so, we're in the infancy of the internet in like 98, 99. I'm like, Walt Flanagan's dog. And it's sticking in your head because you're like, is this a reference I don't get? Is this a movie I don't get? And so I look it up. I remember looking it up and I find out about you and Brian and different people, Ernie, different people that are kind of around the area that are involved in the movies that are friends with Kevin. And so as I'm a fan of Kevin's movies, I find out about you guys. And then as time goes on, DVDs start coming out and you guys pop up in the making of stuff and the documentary stuff and the cut scenes and different things like that. And so I get introduced to Brian and you and Ernie and Vinny Pereira and different people that I just kind of see here and there. So that's my kind of like side of this as I'm growing up. And also Kevin's writing like stories and stuff. And so those stories include you guys as like, and he's doing the Q&A stuff. And it's like, Randall's based on Brian and Brody's based on Walt and all these different things. So you start, getting more familiar with you guys as people, weirdly enough, even though you're not really doing anything specific to like further that. You're just kind of like, people like know who Walt Flanagan is, who Brian Johnson is. It just becomes this weird thing. And so then I remember when Smodcast started, you guys would guest on it here and there. Like I remember there's a couple, you did the Pillow Babies thing and all that stuff. And how you wanted your clone to be your best friend. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like a lot of other people, I guess. I was like, holy shit. Like it was so funny. It was so funny. And I remember for me, it was a little bit later. It must have been maybe late 2011 is when I got into Tell 'em Steve Dave. And it was pretty close to when it started, maybe like a little bit behind, like a year and a half. But I remember listening to the first episode and I remember you being so disinterested. And you're like, yeah, you're like, Brian wanted to start a podcast. So I said, okay, I'll do that. And that's it. You were like, I guess we'll just start a podcast just because whatever. And you expected it to go for 2 episodes or whatever. And I'm listening as the podcast is starting. And, you're being yourself back then, like very much so, I think, probably less guarded because you're like, I don't even know who's going to listen to this. Right. Remember all the stuff, the Gizmos and Gadget stuff that you got a lot of backlash for. So I'm listening to this stuff and I'm hearing you as this essentially like an unwilling participant towards the beginning of Tell 'em Steve Dave in the first couple episodes. Yeah,
because I mean, this was not my thing. I was just involved. Exactly. I was just going to be a part of it.
Exactly.
And
Brian was going to lead the show.
And it was not something that I would have to put any real effort into or thought into. I would just show up and talk about whatever. Q obviously didn't start
Yeah,
on the show
he was barely on the show
as part of the cast.
Yeah,
and he just grew into it, and it really, I think things change, and I know it's crazy, but like you mentioned the gizmos and gadgets and some of the feedback, like
yeah.
I fucking just I just altered my whole way of presenting myself to people based upon those initial responses to me of like, oh, they don't like that?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll just become this kind of quote unquote character on the mic then, and it turned around then because and people and some people get it.
Yeah.
And it's like the people who are around for a long time, they get it. And other people don't get it. And they're like, and you see online people argue like, how the fuck do you not know he is fucking with you? And it's just the way it just evolved that like, and it really wasn't until Sandy that I was like, I'm going to try at this. I'm going to give more effort to it.
Really? Why was that like a turning point?
Because I saw the outpouring. I saw the unbelievable amount of people being like because we put out a Christmas episode right after that.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that came forward and bought it and just and
cared
and just were like, it made me realize, I was just like, well, I should probably give more effort to this, because people deserve more of an effort than I'm giving, and I think than I was before. And I know that's crass to be like, well, it took, but it really just made me go like, I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna really put like thought into this, and I'm going to come up with things, and I'm going to all because I felt I owed it after the response. It was a feeling of like, well, I feel obligated now because people came through for us. The only way I can repay them is to give an effort.
That's really interesting to hear, because like I recognize the fact that in the beginning you're kind of like, yeah, I guess I'll do this. It's not going to last for long. And then now it's completely different. It's a completely different world for Tell 'em Steve Dave. And it's interesting to find like a point in time that you see where that changed too.
That's the point where like everything, I put in way more effort solely because I felt like I could not give them a bigger effort because of, how people came through for us with that Christmas pod.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's funny because I kind of find you to be someone who's like, you have like a creative instinct, because even that early stuff where it's like, how can kids like, save money in college, gizmos and gadgets, like you kind of taking the time even to write that list in the beginning to me is an indicator of that. And then Making Hay is like really early on in Tell 'em Steve Dave. It's like episode 12 or something like that. And that's a pretty big undertaking.
Making Hay?
Making Hay is episode 12. Of
right, but that's a walk in the park to what we do now.
Oh yeah, compared to what you do now.
Because
but even then, the idea of just doing that for fun, it's a pretty big task. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like having, not putting in a ton of effort, that is a lot of effort. That was
one of the ones that like, when we started it, I was like, what we should do? Because we should go there and do that. But like, that was Brian's effort though, because Brian had to do all that cutting. Brian had to put that all together. I didn't have to do anything. I walked away from that. I just was like, we should go to Collingswood. That was my involvement. That was it. And then it was all upon Brian to put that all together. He turned Making Hay into the episode, I think, that people point to as like, well, I like these guys.
Yes, right.
I'm committed to at least following them and seeing where this goes, because that one really, I think, resonated with people. Yeah. And but that's Brian put all that effort in on that one. I can't take credit for that, because he put all that together and he worked hard on that, and he made that episode what it is. Yeah,
I understand that. It's just it's a funny thing, this the idea of like what a podcast is and the difference between like being funny on purpose, being yourself, kind of expressing yourself in a funny way, having a funny personality. And I talk to people about it because I'm like, you know, one of the episodes I point to when I tell people about Tell 'em Steve Dave, I'm like, one of my favorite episodes was Walt Goes Postal. And that's, I think a lot of people is one of their favorites. And it's like, it's a funny show, but that show is basically about you being pissed off at this woman and then being more pissed off at Ming for not like being on your side about it. And I'm like, this is a real funny thing because it's really about your personality. It's not about you trying to be funny or trying to be anything.
You know what? Yeah, you know what? Being funny, I don't know. I know it's. I don't consider humor to be that important to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, you know, Brian has said like it's super important to him that people think he's funny.
Yeah. Right.
I think Hugh has even said that, you know, he wants people to appreciate his sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's never been something that I've cared about. I've never, if somebody, everybody in my family thinks that I've never said anything funny because as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
I don't, it's not something I place any importance on. I don't think I ever will though.
Yeah.
If something comes out that I said that's funny, I'm not sure that it was
intentional.
Yeah. I'm not sure that it was intentional. I really don't try to, I don't want to say I don't try. I'm not an entertainer.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It's like I'm more as authentic as I can be on a mic without, you know, and no one's, I don't think is really truly ever 100% authentic.
I agree.
Like, I'm not trying to do bits. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to make anybody laugh.
You're not looking for a punchline.
Yeah.
You're kind of, it's almost like you care more about like what's compelling about something. Like you want to have a discussion about something or you want to get to the bottom of something.
You know, I'm not saying that I don't think, like, I think that but I'll, you know, we'll laugh and we'll have, but it's not like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Yeah. I never, ever, I don't even consider myself like to be like, you know, like Brian Johnson is funny.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson is funny. They're funny. I don't know if like I am not in that same class.
It's interesting.
Their sarcasm and their ability to tag onto things.
Yeah,
I don't have that ability. Everything that if my involvement is them reacting to what I say.
I know. This is what I find to be so interesting about the show. This is one of the questions I have is like what even is the show? Like, why do people love the show? People love the show. It's indisputable that there's a ton of people who love the show and care about it, have been following it for a decade and really deeply care about it.
Yeah.
But what is the show? And it's so hard to tell.
If I had to say what it's about.
Yeah. It's like, and I even think
it's
about.
Like, I mean, it's almost like that Seinfeld thing. It's about nothing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, I think that the balance of roles is kind of like Brian is going to be more to this way of kind of being like a little bit more brash.
Yeah.
You're completely on the other side of that. And Quinn is kind of the balance of like logic against both sides. Where he's like, you're too much on this side and you're too much on this side. And he like gently pokes fun at both sides. And you and Brian can naturally go at it. And Quinn can kind of take the third, almost like the audience's point of view, which is really, really funny. But yeah, so like all these things are like, I think about when Tell 'em Steve Dave started and it's, you know, these episodes that are like the Gizmos and Gadgets thing, the Walt Goes Postal, Making Hay, eventually the first Christmas special, all these different things that happen. I guess before you get to that point where you know, the Hurricane Sandy, do you feel like the show is like just gaining momentum in terms of like the way you look at it? Because organizing 7 people to come down or games or whatever, it seems like a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of planning that has to go in when you want to have that many people involved in something.
And you want to make something fun.
Yeah. Those early, it just seemed like it was
like friends, like just friends doing stuff for fun.
And what the beauty of it is, there's nothing better than knowing that like if it's a train wreck, it's fine.
Yeah, that's 100% true, because everyone, you, Brian, Quinn, and then Sunday Jeff, Ming, everyone is funny or
Right.
themselves
Because
in a
Brian
different
is
way.
like with his insanely
Just like sharp wit.
sharp humor can just make a train wreck into a fucking, like, you know, the Grand Prix. It's just his ability. You know, that's something that's a nice safety net where, like, you know, you're planning all this stuff. If it goes awry, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I remember when I was like listening to these things, it's funny because I never really had heard a podcast exactly like this. I mean, you guys have such a specific setup where it's like, you know, people know the movies and so they know the store. And now it's you guys have the show in the store. People know where it is. And then Comic Book Men starts and Practical Joker starts. And it's all these people working together to make this show. It's such a strange beast that feels like that really has like a world around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a little universe.
Yeah, exactly. And people can feel that in a way that I think they probably cannot feel for a lot of other podcasts or whatever.
Well, I think that is a definitely something that works in our benefit, because I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the fact that, like, we have like a family that comes in and out, you know, and now more than ever, you know, where we call upon the family to, you know, to play much bigger roles, you know, with the Patreon, so like Sunday Jeff. Oh my God! The man is like it's so fun because he's like and he's not like this in a way in normal though. He's not like a 10-year-old boy who just is willing to just do whatever with a big grin on his face. He's not like that. But when we get together and we start doing a Sunday Jeff show, he just reverts to like up for anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fun, super fun dude who's like. But you know, the rest of the week, he's this crotchety old fucking grouch. But somehow, like when everything comes together, and I'm like, hey, you want to put this costume on, and you want to eat a fig and pretend you're eating and pretend we're having a pussy eating contest. He just is like, hell yeah, it's an amazing thing because he's not like that. You know, the rest of the week.
It's so funny. Yeah, I think that, the universe around it is crazy. I remember, so a couple of years ago, this is probably right after Comic Book Men first started airing. I remember, like, I had already been into the Tell 'em Steve Dave for a little bit, and I told a lot of people about it, and like, especially like the big games episodes, I was always like, oh, these are so crazy. They're so hilarious. Ming's battle rap stuff, everything was it's so funny. And I remember Gina for Christmas one year. I never came to the stash before, even though I've been a fan of USQ stuff for a long time. My mom has bought me stuff from the stash for years. I always had the VHSs, then I had the DVDs, then I had the Blu-rays, I had the books, everything. But I just never came to New Jersey. I didn't really have a reason to come to New Jersey. And Gina was like, she got me a card. And I remember it was a picture of you in the card. This is because I was a fan of Tell 'em Steve Dave. And it's this picture. It's like I don't know what it's from, honestly, but it's you at the counter, like thinking. I've seen it in a lot of places.
Oh yeah, it was for Comic Book Man.
Yeah, it must have been. And it was you with a thought bubble, and it was a picture of me. This is what Gina just made this for fun. And she's like, oh, we're going to go to the stash. And she got me a gift card ahead of time to buy some books in the stash. Isn't that crazy?
That is so strange.
It's so crazy. So it's years and years ago. So I come in. We came to Red Bank first time, and you were drawing at the table, and I came over, and I forgot, I don't know where I leaned. I must have leaned on the tablet or something. Maybe there were light switches over there or something. And I tried to talk to you, and I leaned on the light switches, and I turned the lights off over here. And you were like, you looked up, and I was like, what the fuck? But I remember I just said to you something like, oh, do you have any Tell 'em Steve Dave merch in the store? And you said no. But that's basically all it was. But it was funny because back then I told him, I'm like, I want to work with these guys. I want to go work with these guys someday. And so it's so funny that it came true like so thoroughly, because now it's been like years and years of us working together, like 4 years. This is kind of the journey I want to continue, is like you're doing Tell 'em Steve Dave, and you're probably right. It probably feels like mostly like friends getting together and doing something fun. And like, oh, on Sunday, 7 of us are going to get together. We're going to celebrate Christmas. But it just so happens that, dozens of thousands of people are going to listen to it as a podcast afterwards. But then Comic Book Men comes up, and there's the question of like, from what I remember, and I don't know if this is true, but from what I remember, like the people at AMC listened to Tell 'em Steve Dave, and that was the inspiration for what became the show. Like they were going to do a comic book store documentary show. And from what I remember, Kevin was like, "Oh, you guys can film it in the store," and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna we're gonna look around for like people. We're gonna like try to get people to come and like try out for it, like different comic book people, like real people that work in stores." And they said, "Wait, like who works in the store?" And Kevin gave them Tell 'em Steve Dave, and they listened to Tell 'em Steve Dave, and they're like, "This is the show."
Yeah, Kevin. I heard Kevin tell that story. I don't know. I don't know if it's true. I don't know. I'm thinking like, what episode did they listen to? That they were like, this is the show. I mean, I would love to know what excerpt they listened to that made them fall in love, because yeah, I'm not sure I believe that. I don't know if that just became legend. I don't know. But I mean, it's cool though, right?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. But so you don't consider yourself an entertainer, even
No.
Tell 'em Steve Dave at that point, which is gaining traction and getting a lot of listeners. You guys had a ton of listeners out the gate. I mean, it was even early on in podcasting. 2010 is 10 years ago now. What did you think about when it's like, hey, we want to do Comic Book Men?
Well, like I said previously, I mean, I wanted to give as much effort as I could for Kevin's sake, because he really wanted it to be picked up.
Yeah.
It was important to him. He really wanted it, and I knew he wanted it to, to have a shot at, getting picked up as a series. So, I was committed to giving it my best efforts, and my best efforts meant I would have to fake enthusiasm for stuff that in reality I wouldn't be so over the top for. I wouldn't act like I had seen, the Second Coming because I saw Hulk in '81.
Yeah.
I had to amp it up a bit and become, a bit fake. And it, at times, though, there would be some stress involved, because people were coming to me to do things and to interact with people who were like, who were real celebrities.
Yeah.
Lindsay Wagner's coming in. You have to convince us that like she's the greatest thing to ever walk into the stash, and you have to you just can't be like, I would be, I mean, it's impressive that Lindsay Wagner's here, but I have to amp it up. I have to bring more to it than I normally would. And, I was able to, do it. And it was nice feeling that when it got picked up, because, it was a little bit of payback. I felt like, because Kev had given me a job, he had given me an occupation that I could raise a family on, that I had, where like working in a comic store, it was virtually stress free.
Right.
It was a job that I had that, I was able to raise a family working in a job where I never felt like I was like, oh man, like so many people feel like, oh, I don't feel like going to work tomorrow.
I guess that's one part of the story that I kind of skipped that I'm thinking about now, is like, what was your plan if the story didn't happen?
There was no plan. It was one of those rare moments in my life where I was like, I'm just going to take a shot at this. I'm just going to take a chance.
Yeah.
It was at a point where I probably shouldn't have just taken a chance, because I had just had a child. My first daughter was just born when I took this job full time. But I just threw, I threw caution to the wind and was like, all right, I'm gonna sign on. I'm gonna do this full time.
Yeah.
And it worked out. I mean, if the store closes tomorrow, it was a complete and utter success in my eyes. I was able to raise a family in a job where I never once felt like I was like, like Sunday nights roll around and people are like, oh my God, I can't bear the fact that I have to go to work for the next 5 days at a job I hate.
Yeah.
Kev gave me gave me the ability to never have those thoughts or have that awful feeling, and, going into a Sunday night, and that's, so I had to, if the only way I could pay him back was like, I have to like try as hard as I can to be engaging or have a personality, because I don't consider, I don't have a personality. I know you know that. I had to fake a personality for the shows, for the sake of the television show.
Yeah, I don't agree with the fact you have a personality.
I mean, I have one that's and that's not everyone's cup of tea. It's very low key, very
withdrawn a little bit.
Yeah, and not one that's going to work, I think, on television.
I hear what you mean.
Especially in the role of where I'm the quote unquote manager,
the boss,
and I have to be the guy that's like motivating people, and I have to be challenging the guys to do things. I have to be, I got to have more energy than I normally do.
Yeah.
So I had to do my best to try to do that, and for all that Kevin had given to me. And I'm not saying that I paid him back in full. I'm not saying that at all. But I know that he was happy, though, that the show got picked up, and it was ecstatic that it got picked up for as long as it did.
So you kind of you almost looked at Comic Book Man as like part of the deal. You're like, man, I've benefited from this. Yeah. This is part of the deal.
Yeah, this is just now a new wrinkle that's been put into effect. And it was, and I want to say it was a very nice wrinkle, because you got paid, to be here at work anyway,
right?
To kind of play act with your friends, talk about comics, which I could do kind of easily, for the most part. Come into contact with celebrities who were, who are not the celebrities of today, but were still to me
really important.
Yeah. Really had a very impactful role of me growing up, people like Lou Ferrigno, Adam West, Burt Ward, Lindsay Wagner.
Right.
I'm sure there's plenty of other ones I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
And so it was a wrinkle that didn't come without stress, though.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because it was still having to run a store, and also have a crew in here.
Yeah, and people being like, "Oh, we got to set up lights. Oh, we got to test audio.
Yeah, and I have to be, and you got to be sociable.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm not the most sociable person, so it took me a while to get over that. I mean, there was times I would go home and I would just be like, I just can't say another word. I just feel like I've spoken too much today.
Well, this is what's interesting about the Comic Book Man and the podcast is it's all so generated from your mind in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's exactly improv comedy, but it basically is improvisational conversation that's supposed to be entertaining all the time. And doing that constantly is exhausting.
Yeah.
Super exhausting.
Yeah, it can be. And even exhausting would be when people would come in, customers would come in after the show was on for a while, and there would be that reaction when they saw one of us. If they saw, there was that reaction, it just gave me anxiety because I didn't like that they were excited to see me.
Because it has these high expectations of something.
Yeah, I hated it. I hated that.
When I turned off the lights.
There's a different reaction. That stop in your tracks, wide-eyed, oh my God, it's you.
Yeah.
And that would just that would really give me some sort of anxiety that I did not like dealing with. I was much more happier when somebody walked in who had no idea there was a TV show on, and I was just a clerk.
Yeah.
I was just a guy that was bagging their comic books rather than the guy that they saw on TV and now wanted to have a moment, you know, and they want a moment, and I'm like, oh God, okay, well, is it a good enough moment? What I say to you, there was a stress level for me.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure that when they left, that they weren't that didn't go as well as I hoped.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to say that, but there's there's an expectation there that I don't really dig. Some people dig it. Like
Yeah.
Ming liked that.
Yeah.
Ming liked coming in and being like, people like being like, you're Ming Chen.
Wow, it's Ming. Yeah.
And I didn't like it though.
I understand that. That makes total sense to me. It's funny because since I was already a fan of like comic book men, I mean, Tell 'em Steve Dave, when comic book men started, I started watching it and I was like, I love comic book men. I think comic book men is awesome. I love Tell 'em Steve Dave. That was, what brought me to the table. And that's what I think is kind of the most fun thing, is just the unfiltered element of you guys and the differing opinions and just discussing things and all the stuff that just naturally happened with the games and the Christmas stuff and all the stuff that happened. And then I saw Comic Book Man and I saw some Tell 'em Steve Dave fans at the time be like, oh, this isn't Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Well,
and
how
I'm like,
could it be?
I'm like, you have to understand, it's Tell 'em Steve Dave. Some voices from Tell 'em Steve Dave filtered through like AMC, which is a legitimate mainstream television show. They're going to have to go into, they're going to have to package it a certain way. There has to be a story that's going to have a beginning and an ending. They're going to do all these different things to make it have mass appeal as well. But then you still get the banter with you guys and the podcast parts with Kevin, and even the fun moments. Like we're working on the Tales from Behind the Counter stuff. You see Ming in like one of the episodes, and you call him. You said you call him a piece of shit to his face in one of those episodes. Like, that's the real stuff that pokes through, and that's part of it. I mean, even the fact that the first episode takes place at Collingwood, it's like it's crazy.
It's weird.
I was like, it's an alternative. I'm like, it's almost like an alternative way for you and Brian and Ming and Mike and Kevin to have their voices put into this documentary series.
Right. I'm not. Well, first of all, I recall seeing throughout all 7 seasons though, there would be TSD listeners who are like, I can't stand Comic Book Man. It's not for me. And I respect that.
Sure.
You know why? Because it's not Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Right.
For one part, because Q is not involved.
Quinn's not part of it. Yeah.
Q is, if Q's not there, it's not Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that's like also with the Patreon stuff. Everything became a different title of a show. We created all these different shows because of my huge amount of respect for Q. Is like, I can't call this Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Right.
This is not Tell 'em Steve Dave. This is something different. Mm-hmm. I hope you dig it.
Right.
I hope you like it, but
right.
It's not Tell 'em Steve Dave, and I'm not going to sit here and say it is Tell 'em Steve Dave, because if Q's not there, it's not Tell 'em Steve Dave. But that doesn't mean though that like we can't try to do something fun with Sunday Jeff and create something different.
Yeah.
A different vibe. So right there, I understood. I definitely never took it personal when TSD listeners would be like, this sucks, or this is not, Comic Book Man is trash. It's not Tell 'em Steve Dave. I mean, I wish you wouldn't call it trash, but I get why you didn't like it. I get why it wasn't Tell 'em Steve Dave, because it wasn't Tell 'em Steve Dave. It was, some aspects of it were there. If you were looking hard, maybe you saw them, but Q not being there made it impossible for it to be Tell 'em Steve Dave. He's such a huge important part of Tell 'em Steve Dave, and his voice and his humor and his energy and the different personality that he brings.
Yeah, and he's the voice of reason of the show.
Yeah, I mean, it could never be Tell 'em Steve Dave, and I would never disrespect Tell 'em Steve Dave by trying to call something Tell 'em Steve Dave if he's not involved. So we tried to create other things while he's super busy with IJ.
Yeah.
But, and as far as, the things though that people didn't like about Comic Book Men, again, I got it. I mean, you got it. You are never going to be able to put reality of the stash on there, because it would fucking, a test pattern would beat it in the ratings. It's fucking boring.
Actually,
people would walk in and buy a comic book and walk out. There was no banters were going on.
You want to know something funny? So we filmed Sunday at the Stash, and it's about Sunday Jeff on a Sunday at the Stash. And I have the GoPro angle from the front of the store, and it's 5 hours. And I was like, what if we put that 5-hour video out as a joke, and it's just that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what reality, quote unquote, reality TV is, and they have to amp it up. They have to
create stories.
Yeah,
it's almost like a vehicle for your voices. It's a vehicle for your personalities to kind of shine through. They thought that was funny, and this is a cool world to like document, and you guys were good guides for that world. You know what I mean? That's how I think about it. And it's funny. So we kind of catch up to the point where, like, you know, Gramercy is in 2016. And from my point of view, there's just not a lot of video stuff from Tell 'em Steve Dave. I think at that point there was Puppet Theater, Tell 'em Steve Dave, what's it called, where someone mixes up all the quotes and they made a cartoon
out
of
of context.
Out of context,
Yeah.
yes. And that was awesome.
Yeah.
But there's not too much video stuff for 6 years.
Don't forget Making Clay.
And Making Clay.
Let's not forget that. Remember when I said there's things I'm proud of and there's some things I'm not proud of? Well, I'll just leave it at that.
Someday, I hope the whole story of Making Clay comes out, but I don't know if that's ever able to happen. I would love that. Remember the Fiasco Pod? It would be like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind it. I don't think Brian Q would ever be digest like having Oz come in and tell his side of the story and our side of the story. I don't think they would want any part of it because I think there's such a harsh feeling still.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has harsh feelings too. I mean, things didn't turn out the way he wanted them.
Yeah.
On both sides, there was mistakes were made. On both ends.
Yeah.
Some were more egregious than others.
Yeah.
Some were so fucking beyond the pale that I'm like, how did you think this would go when you fucking did this?
I know.
But lessons learned though.
Yeah.
Everything leading up to all the things we're doing on Patreon were lessons learned on how to deal with people, how to
be cautiously optimistic about bringing people in.
Don't rely, and things I learned was don't rely on one person to bring something to fruition, because if that one person fucking goes off the rails, you're fucked.
I remember first. I think it was when we filmed Scream Bear and Scream, because we had worked on a couple of things together. I think I did a couple of things with you guys before that. And I remember I was leaving, and you're like, "Thank you so much for coming to film." And I'm like, "Yeah." And you know, for me, I'm like, "This is great. I'm happy to film with you guys. I've grown up knowing about you guys and liking all the stuff that you're part of, and now Tell 'em Steve Dave and everything." And you were like, "Every time I email you, I think I'm just never going to hear back again. Every time I try to talk to you again, I feel like one day you're just going to disappear."
I said that.
Yeah, you said that to me.
Yeah, because I mean. You get that feeling of like this could happen again, you know, and it just like, you know, things can go wrong, you know. I mean, it just happens. That's life, you know. But you know, thankfully though, you know, so far, knock on wood, things have not gone wrong, you know. You know, I mean, you're a valuable member and a contributor, and you know, we're lucky to have. I'm lucky I read that postcard. All the way through, because if I'm not sure if we would have ever connected. You know, probably.
I know. So it's funny. So we catch up to that point. We do Gramercy, and then what's interesting is like you guys didn't have a lot of video projects. Then all of a sudden we had like 3 or 4 in a row that were just kind of random. There was previous to Patreon. It was Gramercy, where we also released the
wedding,
the wedding footage that was shot years before.
Yeah.
Then you were like, "Oh yeah, we also want to do this thing called TESD TV." We shot it, and we have the Blu-ray wrap. Like, can you figure out how to like get it made into Blu-rays? Because I had basically when we did Gramercy, I was the one that found a Blu-ray like distribution house, and I set up that deal. And so I set that up again, and I think I did a voice in that too. And then there was one more thing, right?
Elephants in the Room.
Elephants in the Room. You were like, "Oh yeah." So basically, you filmed Elephants in the Room. Largely because the lights were in the store,
right?
And the crew was around for Comic Book Men.
Yep.
And you were like, "Let's film a game show," because you guys had done obviously games on the show.
I mean, the origins were. I mean, it's not as pretty. We were working on Comic Book Men, and I got into a tiff with somebody. I won't say who it was, and I was so pissed off that I felt like so much negative energy. I was like. I should take all this energy and just create something, a new game or something.
Yeah.
And I started to come up with all that stuff for Elephant's Room, all the little bits and games and little contests and the podcasts that, you know, the awkward podcast that everybody would be forced to do.
Yeah.
And I felt it was like, I was like, I think this is strong. I think this is really strong. And I said to get him, we should get costumes. And that's the first time I'm like, that's the origin. All that stuff you're seeing on Patreon.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, that it all starts really there, but like with the safari costumes. And if Gideon was like, if Gideon didn't go, if Gideon was like, it wasn't anything less than like, yeah, you can get safari hats, he goes. And if he didn't like say like immediately, like, yeah, you can get those hats, the pith hats, he goes. Like I would have like, I was immediately like, we're doing hats, we're doing costumes.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was big enough where it could be a special project. Mm-hmm. And I asked the guys on the crew on Comic Book Man if they would stay one night and film it all.
Yep.
They agreed to do it, had a blast doing it, and we gave you all the footage.
Yeah.
And you edited it all together, put it all together,
yep.
And the end result was something, again, one of those things that I'm just like, this came out way better than I ever thought it could ever come out. The commercials,
all
everything.
Commercials.
It's a great little project that I'm super proud of.
Yeah.
And it was, it started us on the path of doing more things like that.
Yeah.
On the Patreon.
It's just interesting that those 3 projects happened like, in a row. They pretty much did. Gramercy, TESD TV, and Elephants in the Room. And then I remember we were talking about the commercials and we're like, oh, let's have people submit them. That'd be fun. Mm-hmm. And you were like, oh, I had this idea for the Scream Baron Scream.
Yep.
And you were like, would you want to come up and film it? And I'm like, hell yeah. And so I came up and I remember it's still weird. That's the first time I'm really talking to you after we started working together in person. We were like matching up all the Mexican monster movie scenes to like our actions and saying like, well, what can you do that looks like it's going to be part of this, where it's like throwing the spear and stuff like that, all that stuff. I'm meeting Brian for the first time and we're filming stuff with Sunday Jeff.
Sunday Jeff is there, Dollar Shave.
Yeah. And it was crazy because to be completely honest, when you asked me to do that, I didn't really know if I could pull that off. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like it seems like it's a really strange idea. I'm like, and I remember I was sending you like samples of what I was working on, and I became so obsessed with making it look identical to that original footage, which is really important for it to work, And I love Scream Baron Scream. Yeah. If we ever want to do like an expanded type of project like that, I would love to. It came out so funny and effective. It was so funny.
I think people were taken aback.
Me too.
By it because it's so different. It was so, like I said, it would propelled us onto the road to be a lot more sillier.
Yeah.
A lot more goofier. Yeah. Like some of the things we would wind up doing on Frank 5 Rewind.
Yeah.
All that, and like I told this on the Comic Book Man pod though, like, being on that show though, for those 7 years was like the shells and the way he embraced it and the way he spoke to me and like wanted to hear ideas and wanted to do things that I wanted to do was an amazing boost of confidence that like a guy who's in his position. Mm-hmm. It wants to do what I want to do. I mean, that is weird because that is not something that, like the week earlier, I'm ordering from Diamond, 6 copies of Fantastic Four. And then the next week, a guy who's worked on multiple TV shows is like, well, what do you want to do? You got any ideas that we can film a show around?
Yeah, to put on AMC.
And then it happens, and then he's happy about it, and you can see how much fun he's having. That's a boost to your
self-esteem.
Your self-esteem, yeah, because you're willing then to do other things. You're willing then to like do. You're willing to allow yourself to say to your friends like, you want to do this, or stuff that I probably wouldn't have even offered up to them because I feel it was too silly or too stupid.
Right, and even to like, instead of just having an initial thought, you go way further down that path and say, oh yeah, if we did this, we could do this and this and this, as opposed to stopping at the beginning.
It's like I said on the Frank 5 Rewind, it's like, if I'm not on Comic Book Man, I never am willing to go and do like dance on screen with Frank. I'm never able to do, it's like all that stuff is just comes from getting, what's it called when you get a response, a positive response.
Yeah.
And when you get positive response like that, you're like, okay, well, maybe we can do this then. Maybe it isn't stupid if I suggest this.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's and in the timeline, it's funny because it goes like, those 3 Blu-rays, and then Comic Book Man doesn't get picked up.
Yeah.
And I remember because I'm first working with you guys, and I was kind of randomly working on these projects continually, just because they kind of came one after the other. And then you're like, oh, we're going to start a Patreon. We're going to start a Patreon when Comic Book Man ended. And that's when we were just like, oh, let's, you were just like, we want to film some stuff. We didn't really talk about what the future was going to hold in terms of how much we were going to do, probably because you didn't know at all.
I didn't know. Yeah. See, it was basically going to be all audio.
Yeah. One of the things I wonder about is like the conversation of like, let's turn Tell 'em Steve Dave the podcast and let's do the Patreon. Because I think that's an interesting conversation from your point of view. Just you know what I mean? Let's get
Brian, when he found out about the Comic Book Man not being picked up, I remember he sent me a text going like, holy shit, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Because he has, he was counting on that.
Yeah.
He had no job. He was counting on that income.
He's starring in a huge TV show for 7 years.
He was counting on that. I remember that text, and I was like, well, we talked about doing this. You mentioned that, because he had mentioned how successful Ralph Garman's was.
Oh yes, right.
He had started one a little bit earlier, and it was, he had a huge, great turnout. And I was like, well, why don't we just do that then? I said, now we'll have nothing but time to do it. I said, there's nothing holding us back now other than like Q.
Right.
Still being heavily involved with IJ though.
Right.
So we had to go to Q and be like, we want to, do you want to do this? You're okay with us doing this because, you have it's your gig too. We know you don't have a lot of time, but are you okay if we start this? And he was like 100% supportive. And he was like, when I'm available, I'll come down and do stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, go for it. Do what you guys feel is the right thing to do. And we did the 4 audio pods. It was like we're going to do
Puck Nuts,
Tidbits, Sunday Jeff Show, and Space Monkeys.
Yeah, we did the Any Given Sunday video as like a precursor to the all new Sunday Jeff show.
Again, something that like. When you say it to these guys, like I want to do NFL films, only because I love NFL films.
Yeah, right.
No other reason. Those guys don't want to do NFL films. They have no interest in it. Yeah. But I'm like, I text them and I'm like, I want to do this. And to their benefit, they always say yes. They always say yes. And there's never like, 'cause I would be self-conscious. Like I could see Jeff easily being like, I want you to wear a headband and pretend that you're spiking a ball poorly. I want you to run around knowing full well that the way you're going to run in slow motion is going to look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they're all in all the time. And it's truly, lucky that, I have around me people who are up for, they're not up for everything. They're not for everything, but but they're up for almost anything.
Yeah.
And that Sunday, what was it?
It's called Any Given Sunday.
Any Given Sunday. Yeah.
It came out really funny.
It came out funny, but it was just a tiny little morsel. And we were trying to do live streams.
Yes, that's right.
That was one of the things that we were going to promise to higher tiers was live streams.
Yeah, and there was a lot.
And I was getting so fucking frustrated with because seeing the comments of like streams down.
Yeah.
Streams down. And I was just like, people are paying for this shit. People deserve better than this. They're giving us money for this.
Yeah.
I want them to walk away happy. And it sounds like they're not happy with this live stream bullshit.
When you started the Patreon, did you think it was going to be a huge jump in responsibility, or were you kind of more like, you did?
I knew it would be.
Did you think it was going to like be so successful and last for so long?
It doesn't. It feels like it just started.
It does feel like it just started.
Yeah, it feels like it just started. I know we've been going on for a while, but there's a big body of work behind it. Like there's a big library that's been building up every week.
It's crazy.
But yeah, I knew it. I knew that like I'm the type of person that I was like, I took so much like I wanted, like I said from the beginning, like when I talk about 2012 Sandy, like these people deserve
Yeah.
more from me.
Yeah.
I knew if I did the Patreon, I was like, well, if we're going to do gifts and we're going to do this, I need to be the last line. I need to be like, the guy that like falls on.
Yeah.
I just need to be that guy. I cannot like relegate that to somebody else. I need to be the guy that's like getting the stuff ordered on, getting the stuff sent out. Although my daughter does a lot of it though, but like
Yeah.
I'm on top of her to do it and everything. I need to be that person, or else I'm like, I feel like I'm not giving what I should be giving.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. I remember, when it started, I was psyched on just the Patreon idea, not even in terms of being involved. I was just excited that you guys were doing that with the extra, different episode every week. And I thought it was super appropriate too, because there were just so many characters that were part of the show by that point in time, with Ming and Sunday Jeff and Get 'em, and then eventually, even Frank 5 and all these different people.
Well, Frank was
he was a little bit like,
he was an unknown. Like I had no expectations that it would work out.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
And he reminds me a little bit of Sunday Jeff. Was like he has that boyish charm and energy. Like Brian's a different personality. Like I don't want to put Brian in a weird costume, because that's not his personality.
Right.
His personality is biting, sarcasm.
Yeah.
Sunday Jeff's personality is goofy, silly, and like he will go into a silly costume. Get him, same thing.
Yeah.
They add and bring different aspects that me and Brian don't bring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that is super fun. I hope it transcends and other people are enjoying it just as much as I am, because some of the stuff we do on Frank 5, it's super silly, but like I hope people feel the same amount of fun that we have doing it, though, because he's a great dude. I wish he lived closer. He would be involved in a hell of a lot more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. It's crazy. So Patreon starts, and the Patreon, were you surprised by how successful it was immediately?
Yeah. I because I think that people expected it to not. There's a lot of people I know, but like there's one of the biggest supporters of Tell 'em Steve Dave, one of the biggest guys. I like a guy who's been there from the beginning. Curator.
Yeah.
He sent me an email after the Tell 'em Steve Dave Patreon was up for a while. It had to be up for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And told me that he thought it was the worst idea that we would ever have. He said that there is no way in hell he thought that we would put out weekly podcasts and that it would devolve into a fiasco and that people would be resentful.
Yeah.
And that resentfulness on the listeners' part would bleed into us being resentful of the listeners.
Wow.
His instincts were right.
Yeah.
Because we weren't putting out an episode as regularly as people want us to.
Yeah.
So I think that they felt like their apprehensions were not unfounded, that like there's no way they're going to be able to put out a weekly thing on time, every time, week in and week out.
Yeah.
And I'm super proud to say that we haven't missed a week since
it
started.
Yeah, we haven't missed a week since it started.
It hasn't missed a week, and we have enough content now to get us into the winter months.
Yep.
And that all comes from, like I said, that level of like I owe, I feel like that when I owe somebody something like Kevin, I feel like I got to give as much as I can give. And I felt the same way with the listeners. I felt that if they're going to give us money,
mm-hmm.
I'll be damned if I'm not going to try to give them as much as I can give, and make sure that like I'll move heaven and earth to make sure we get something out week in and week out.
Yeah.
And the merchandise, ordering stuff that I hope people will dig and enjoy, because they're paying a lot of money. I want them to be happy.
Yeah.
And for the most part, knock on wood, I mean, it has been met with a lot of people being happy with the outcome and what has come out of it so far.
Yeah.
But it gets tougher every fucking cycle. You're like, what new thing could I slap Tell 'em Steve Dave on? You know, like we got shower curtains coming out. We got a
That's
shower
amazing.
curtain. It looks awesome.
I love
too.
it. Yeah, I
but
bet
we
it
got a
does.
shower curtain that's going to be coming out. I don't know when this is airing, but when this is dropping, but
Yeah.
but in September,
Yeah.
shower curtains will be delivered to one of the tiers.
That's amazing. I
Yeah,
love
it
that.
looks awesome though too.
I bet it does. I bet it does. No, it's awesome. It's just to me it's so fascinating because like I said, it's a project that's based around your guys, like all of you, you, Quinn, Brian, and then the extended people, their personalities interacting. That's what people care about is the relationships that exist, the friendships that exist,
the familyness, the family aspect of it. I don't listen to any other podcast. I don't know anything about what anybody else is doing out there.
Yeah.
I imagine there has to be something like that out there, right? Where like that a big extended family that comes in.
It's really tough. There's not something that compares because you guys have this lead of like, hey, we were starting to be in like the public eye or people knew about us 15 years before we started the podcast. And then we slowly, people knew about us more and more. And then we have a home base that is public. That's really strange. You know what I mean? Everyone knows where you are. You have a home base that's public. By the way, 2 of us have this TV show on AMC. 1 of us has this show on True TV. It's just like all this stuff. It's like there's not something that I think can compare to that. There's definitely other.
I meant in terms of I know what you're saying. Like we have a leg up because we're Q is so visible.
It's expansive, yeah.
But I mean, like, is there like because I love it. I cherish the circle of all the people that we bring in from time to time. Troy, Chris Ladondo, Frank, Giddem, Sunday,
Tim,
the record store clerk. Now Brian Nichelle is playing a much bigger role, and I love it.
Love it too.
And to me, I love adding new members to the growing family.
Yeah.
And I think, and I know that people appreciate that. Like that picnic episode we did.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe some of the comments that were sent to me of how it touched people, to have just friends out in the backyard playing wiffle ball. And that's, and none of it was, it's not bullshit. Did we get together because we wanted to create some content? Yeah. But it's not like we're not all friends anyway. Like Mike showing up, Ming showing up, and, that's all. Yeah, it's just the circle that we have. And I think it's nice to showcase everybody in the family from time to time. It's a nice ability to have, and I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't listen to a lot of other podcasts. Do they have that kind of that cast that you can call upon?
It's the closest thing is probably something similar to when Howard Stern would have his cast of characters come in and out that he knows. But like I said, it's hard to find probably people with as much of a history and such an expansive group of people. There are probably other podcasts with a smaller version of it. You know what I mean? That's what I think about. Yeah, it's honestly, so, we did Frank 5 Happy Days was early on in the Patreon, and we were doing the Patreon for a while. We've been doing it for over 2 years now. Yeah. We've come out with 1 million different videos and podcasts and stuff. And eventually I was like, this is just what I thought in my head. I was like, I know how Walt felt about Happy Days, the TV show, because we filmed the Happy Days thing. And I'm like, Tell 'em Steve Dave has become like Walt's Happy Days. That's what it is. Where it's all these different characters and they're all interacting, and this person has a funny thing. I mean, you guys are joking about Quinn's air conditioning on the newest episode of Tell 'em Steve Dave. It's about your real relationships and the different people that bring different elements of things to the table.
Right. Yeah. Because everybody has such a different. Yeah. You wouldn't go after Ming if Ming's air conditioner broke.
Yeah.
The jokes wouldn't have been the same because, you can poke fun at Q because, we, make fun of him that it was his walk-in closet that lost his air conditioning.
And Frank's going to be like, I drove 4 hours to see, Lucille Ball's hands pushed into cement. Yeah, everyone brings a really different element and different personality.
That's what,
to the
table. One of the Frank 5 projects that, again, it's like it's up there with the Making Hay documentary is the Batman one.
Yeah,
it's super special to me because we were able to get so many people in that cast of rogues for Batman.
Yeah,
that was something that I wanted to do for so long, and it finally was able to work itself out with everybody's schedule.
Yeah.
That one is one that I'll remember. Like when the Patreon's done and we're not making any more stuff.
Yeah.
That's one that will be remembered super fondly because of how special it was to have everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. I'll be honest. Sometimes when I'm editing the projects that we do, especially the ones that are based on stuff that you love, like $6 Million Man, different things like that. When I work on it, I think about the idea of I want to make something that Walt looks back at and feels like this truly represented how I felt about this.
Have.
You know what I mean?
On multiple occasions. Yeah. I mean, that Batman 66 one, I remember everybody who saw it was just blown away by it. The Comic Book Men, that first episode, I told Nichelle, I was like, I think it's going to be funny. I think there's going to be moments where where there's some heartfelt moments. And there are. I mean, I know coming up, like that first season, there's a whole bunch of moments where it's not just about yucks.
Yeah.
It's about telling people, how much that you will remember them long after, that you didn't even think, moments that touched you or moments that were significant to you.
Yeah.
So there will be nice moments along with hopefully laughs too.
Yeah. Right. No, it's been a crazy ride. And I'm glad we got to sit down because the idea of you even starting this podcast being like, well, I'm not an entertainer. And it's like, here's the 60 video projects.
Do you notice though that I have, I mean, people are taking a lot more notice now. It seems like everybody's saying it now, but you don't do anything. You just show up and you have everybody else do it. And people have figured that out. And I'm like, fuck, it took a while, but finally someone realized that, I love putting other people in the position like I wanted Nichelle to lead Comic Book Men.
Sure. I
wanted Sunday Jeff to be the star of his own podcast.
Yeah.
Frank 5, the guy I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I was like, I want you to lead it.
I know.
I'm much more comfortable in having somebody else do it, but yet I still want to be able to kind of control the narrative, which is weird.
I think what it is that you feel like what makes a good show, so you're like, here's the way the flow should be, and stuff.
And I feel like I know how I could present, Gidim. Giddim's the perfect example.
Oh yeah.
I want to be able to. I feel I could present the best side of Gidim.
Yeah.
To the listeners, rather than the multifaceted side that I know that people don't want to know that side. People don't want to know that side. Yeah, I could present your best face. Yeah. Let me do it. Yeah. Let me show the world how you should be.
Yeah.
Or how fun you can be, and not have to deal with all the other bullshit that comes along with it.
Oh yeah.
But I guess that's true though. I'm like, I want to foist them into the
spotlight
and then but I also want to be able to control how it goes, which is a strange feeling. But I definitely realize I have that though.
Yeah, no, it's great.
And putting Tim the record store clerk as bringing him involved and having him run purveyors, posters, and playlists.
Yeah. It's great.
It's weird. I do like that though. I do enjoy bringing different voices and having them be
right.
The person, I don't know what's not leading, but being
it's like the main personality of an idea. So if you're like, let's do a show about music, who do I know that knows about music? This person should be in this role. Yep. Here's how the show should go.
Yeah, the Kiss ones,
exactly.
I love. I mean, people hate that Kiss one. People hate the Kiss shows, and I'm like, how can they hate this?
I think it's five people.
No, it's way more than 5 people. It's way more than 5 people. I don't understand what it is. Is I I took for granted that not everybody watching and listening grew up in the 70s loving glam rock. And I just assumed that everybody was me, and that people would adore 4 middle-aged guys wearing Kiss masks and Kiss shirts. What's like? I mean, they're like made to look like the Kiss costumes. I forget what that's called. And I was wrong. But we got so many in the can. I am not pulling the plug on the Kiss pod. We got too many in the can. I paid too much for those Kiss episodes already. They're coming out, regardless if people hate them or not. I love them. I love them too. I don't know how the fucking opening can't win people over.
That's how I feel too.
The opening is so awesome.
I know. I love them too, and it's funny because I'm a good example of someone you're talking about. I was born in 1984, so every show we do, of Frank Five or the Kiss stuff. It's not stuff that I know. I learned about it.
You grew up in the 90s.
I grew up in the 90s.
So yeah, you have no affection for any of the things we're talking about, and I forget that at times, though, and I get blinders on, and I'm like, I remember telling Jeff, I'm going to do this Kiss show where we review every album, and he was like, that's going to be the fucking greatest podcast you ever do. And boy, how wrong we were, because I was like, I know, it's going to be great. People are going to eat it up. People are going to love it. I mean, I got an email that was fucking 15 paragraphs telling me how like they're quitting the Patreon because it's a vanity project. That was the exact word he used. And I wrote back, I was like, fuck yeah, it's a vanity project. I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's vanity, then so be it. But like, what do you want me to do?
I think the idea of personalities, talking about things that they love and that being able to kind of like get through to people, I think that is common. And we certainly have done that with Frank Five. I got to imagine a lot of the people that like Frank Five's Rewind.
Most people love that.
Has not seen a lot of those shows though.
Yeah, we're changing that around though. Yeah, we're definitely moving away from the shows that I grew up with. But we need to come up with a hook on the Kiss pod, a new wrinkle for the next time we go in, because we got to do something to change it up, because something a little bit more, I don't know what it is, but we got to figure out a new wrinkle to add into the pods when we start filming rock and roll. No, podcast. What's it called?
It's called Rock and Roll Night and Podcast Every Day.
Yeah, we gotta inject something new into it that's going to capture everyone's fancy, because what's happening right now ain't doing it.
Yeah,
just talking about the old Kiss albums and songs. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, definitely.
Or if we don't, oh well. It's a skip week then for most people.
Well, yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Oh, no problem.
I've wanted to do this for a long time, because I do find you to be like a conundrum of a person. Because I know you feel like you're not an entertainer, but how can someone who's not an entertainer produce so much? So much of your time is based around recording on video and audio, your voice and your feelings and your thoughts.
I did another podcast recently.
Yeah,
I don't ever really do podcasts. I just do Tell 'em Steve Dave related stuff, and that's it. I've told so many people, no, thank you. I'm flattered, but I'm not interested.
Right.
And I did one when COVID first hit.
Yeah.
I was locked down. Somebody sent me a really nice email, and I agreed to do it.
Yeah.
This is my last podcast outside Tell 'em Steve Dave. Because after that, I just cannot stop saying no to people, because now so many people have reached out to me and like, you want to do my podcast? I saw you did this podcast. You want to do my podcast? And I'm like,
I know, and you're already like crushed with.
Yeah, I hate saying no, and I feel horrible saying no, but I'm just no interest in doing anything other than what I have to do.
The huge workload of doing that stuff that you already have.
And what more can I talk about though?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm talking about Kiss fucking songs, because there's nothing left to talk about anymore after 10 years.
I understand. I know. I was like, when I go into this, I don't want to.
You're my last non-Tell 'em Steve Dave podcast I'll ever do.
Wow.
This is I don't know if it's an exclusive or. But yeah, that's it.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
We've been working together for the past like 3 or 4 years, and it's
I hope you continue to want to work with us. But I mean, I've heard rumblings that from somebody else we're working on that your talents have been noticed. So hopefully you don't get stolen.
No, I tell everybody, I'm like, if it's up to me, I work on Tell 'em Steve Dave projects until there is no Tell 'em Steve Dave.
Oh well,
that's how I feel.
I imagine the right. I appreciate that, but I don't believe any of that.
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's true, man. I promise. You know, one of my favorite things we ever filmed was the 2018 Halloween episode with the Baron transformations.
Oh yeah,
that's one of my favorites. And I was watching it recently for some reason. I'm like, man, it was just me and Rupert, who I love. I love that dude. And it was pretty intimate. There wasn't like a big crew here. It was just me and him. And then
I think Victor was there, right? Because he was helping
Victor
out
was
with
doing
the
photography.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the first time he ever worked with us.
Yeah,
He did pictures.
It was weird how he came about. He just showed up one afternoon.
I know.
At the store, walked back here and was like, "Hey, I'm here. I know you don't do a lot of pictures on Tom, Steve, Dave. I think you should do this." And I'm like, he was so polite.
Yeah.
And so nice.
Yeah.
I said, and this was like a couple of days before we did that shoot.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll come down and do anything. He goes, whatever you name it. And I was like, well, and I never do this. And like, it's almost like the postcard thing. It was like, it was meant to be because he's been very valuable. It's invaluable. I mean, he's been awesome.
Yeah.
Is I never say, okay,
yeah.
Just come down. I never do that. And but he was so fucking nice. I was like, we're doing this Halloween thing. I said, I don't know if there's really anything for you to do. Yeah. But if you want to come down and help out and snap some photos, I'm sure that'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And he came down and he filled the cauldron.
Yes.
He filled the cauldron. It took him hours to fill the cauldron.
That's
and that just made me go like, I got to find something for him to do. He was so cool about coming out because he was a photographer and I had him filling a cauldron. With water, like a pitcher of water over and over and over again because the cauldron was too big to get in the sink.
I remember. Yeah, it was too big to get in the sink.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. It's just like you don't know how life is going to work out. Like him walking in on any other day, other than the fact that we had something coming up within 2 days.
Right.
I might have just like been like, yeah, give me your email, and would have been lost to the hundreds of emails that I've gotten over the course of the last 10 years. But I guess it was just meant to be sometimes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you,
thank you.
letting me be a part of this world as well. You know, it's been a lot of fun, and you've given me a ton of creative freedom with this stuff, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Well, like I tell everybody, I say, your sense of comedic timing and editing is amazing. Like you get it. You get us and you get how it should be cut and you get what should be on camera and what shouldn't be. And that's not easy to come by because you know how to edit it to put us in our funniest light.
I appreciate that, man.
You definitely. And I tell that to anybody who wants to talk about these projects, which isn't that many.
No, I definitely feel like when we started working together more and more, I was like, oh, it's definitely like a kindred spirit kind of thing in terms of like what we think is the right move to make for projects and stuff like that, which has been awesome.
I mean, like the last two things you've turned in, I mean, I've had absolutely nothing to give you because I've been so fucking smitten with it, you know? So, and it's a credit to your skills as an editor.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I love doing this stuff. I mean, the last time we came down with that 6-day marathon of projects was, I love that stuff. It's so fun. It's like so energizing. Oh, I know you were sleeping on the floor by the last day.
Yeah, the last night. Yeah, I was actually sleeping on the floor because I had checked out.
I know.
I had checked out the night before during one of the ones. I was just like, I want to be done with this.
I know it was a lot, but it was great. It was really fun. I had a ton of fun. And I think the projects are getting better and better, if you want my honest opinion.
I think so too. I see the bar gets raised every once in a while, and like the Frank 5 Batman, the bar was raised.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think the bar will be raised again on the new Frank 5 film rewind that we're going to kick off soon in a couple months. I think the bar gets raised again.
Yeah, I agree.
I think.
The Comic Book Men pod.
Yeah, like
I know.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. If you can get that fun feeling that we're all having here and get it on video or on audio.
Yeah.
Hopefully that, people can also feel the fun in the room.
Yeah, they do. That's why they keep coming back, man. All right, bud. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been an awesome couple of years, and to many more. Of walking through these doors and staying until 2 a.m. sometimes.